I want to make a couple of announcements, just again, relative to this. First of all, thank you all for being here, because this is a first in a brand new series we thought we'd try out. So we're very excited. Our next one, you'll see it in the shofar, and you'll see it, of course, you'll get an email or two about it. April 27th, David Weintraub will be our tour guide, and we'll be going to Russia and the Baltic states. And that's going to be very exciting.
I might help him with that, Karen. I might present some of it.
Okay, well, so then David and Terry.
If you don't mind.
Okay, no, of course not. It's okay. That one's your show. So also I want to thank the two co-presenters tonight who were brave enough or willing enough to volunteer and help out with our first program. So it's, of course, Carol Liff and Joan Schwartz will be taking turns. Just to give you an idea where we're going tonight. There's lots of places in Spain and Spain mostly that we won't be going. We may come back to at a later date. But we're going to Toledo, Barcelona, Girona, which maybe a lot of you may not have heard of, but you'll be excited to see what's there. And then we'll be going to three places actually in Lisbon and two other cities in Portugal. And finally, Joan's going to take us to Gibraltar. Surprising to find out there's actually Jewish culture there. So that's where we're going. And the only other thing I will ask you, of course, is to stay on mute. And we've decided, in the interest of keeping on schedule and making sure we get to everything, we're going to ask you to hold all questions, let me put it this way. We'll save the question and answer and discussion till the very end. But in the meantime, if you do have something you want to ask, go ahead and put it in the chat. Okay? And so with that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to mention to you. Okay, so let's get started. And just to kind of give you a perspective, what we're trying to do with this series is not just say, here's how I spent my summer vacation, here are the pictures, I went to this, the other. We want to give you a sense of a little bit of the Jewish history of that place. What's it like today? Are there Jews living there today, or was it just someplace ancient? Or conversely, is it someplace new for Jews? So that's kind of where we'll be going. All right. So for starters, we're talking about the Iberian Peninsula, which I'm sure I think you're all familiar with where it is. Of course, southwest of Spain on the Atlantic. And just I want to give you a quick sort of history of the geography of that area, because it really impacts the history of the Jews. So just to show you Iberia through the centuries. Way back 200 CE, it was all dominated, it was part of the Roman Empire. And just to point out, there's a couple of cities here, Barcino, I don't know if that's how the Romans pronounced it, Tolosa, those are two of the places we'll be talking about tonight. Cesar Augusta is now Saragossa, I think it is. So it's interesting how some of these names have endured through the centuries. All right, so it went from being a Roman, province. By 500, it was predominantly Visigothic, the Visigoths. If you took Spanish in high school in New York State anyway, probably learned about the Visigoths and the other ones, I don't remember. Gaul is what would now be France. And the Sueves I know nothing about. I looked it up. They were a Germanic tribe, but they occupied a big chunk of what is now Portugal and part of Spain. Okay, by 750 now, something dramatic had happened, and we'll talk a little more about it. And that is the Moors from northern Africa, really from what would now be Morocco, had begun to invade the peninsula and occupy it starting in 711 the year, not 711 the store. And by 750, they occupied the entire, almost the entire Iberian Peninsula. And Barcelona is now Barcelona. So you'll see how, and I can't even say it, but that's Toledo. All right, by 979, the Arab influence or the Moorish influence was starting to recede, or their occupation was receding a little bit. Cordoba is now Cordoba, or why it was Cordoba became Cordoba again. Now we have Barcelona has its own name. It's no longer part of the Islamic world. And by 1215, we start to see, suddenly we have Portugal and we have these other kingdoms. It was not Spain yet. So the Almohads were still with the Moors. And now but they were just pretty much southern Spain. You had Leon, Castile, Aragon, All right. So again, more and more of the Europeans, if you will, were taking over the Iberian Peninsula. By 1453, it was down to Portugal, which is now bigger. And you had these two big kingdoms, Castile and Aragon, with a little tiny bit of, Moorish occupied Granada. I think that's Malaga, Granada and Malaga, I think. No, maybe not. Well, anyway, that's the little bit that's left. And then by 1648, you had Spain and Portugal, almost what it looks like today, except no Gibraltar yet. Or at least the rock was there, but the province or the whatever its territory wasn't there. All right, so we can see there really was no Spain per se until, I want to say 1650s or 15 something. We'll see it come up later. All right, so that just gives you the sense of who was occupying that region, and you'll see how it impacted the Jews. All right, so here's just, again, I want to give you a brief history of the Jews on Iberia, and then we'll start after that, we'll really pretty much go to our travel. So just to kind of fill you in, the Jews there were actually Jews there even before the destruction of the Second Temple, the temple in Jerusalem. But once the Romans, got rid of the Jews, expelled them, I guess, from Jerusalem, many, many of them began coming to the Iberian Peninsula. Under the Romans, Visigoths, the Christian kings, they were not well treated. All right, so it was not a great time for them. Then when the Muslims came, or the Moors, Jewish status improved dramatically. And why did that happen? First of all, they were, Semitic peoples, but also the Iberian Jews welcomed and even assisted the Moors. And you've all heard of this, the golden age of Iberian or Spanish Jewry. Under the Moors, Jews were really highly regarded. They were full participants. They were successful. It was just a great time to be Jewish. So these are just some of the significant Jewish communities that existed in that era. And just to give you an idea, Girona, we'll talk about tonight, Toledo, Granada, Seville, Cordoba, and Malaga are all in the south of Spain. And I'm sure many of you have visited at least some of those places. I don't know how many of you have been to Girona, but hopefully after tonight, you'll want to go there. All right, and then the picture on the right, we'll come back to that one. It's one of the synagogues actually in Toledo, back when. All right, and again, like Barcelona, there were smaller communities elsewhere in Spain. Madrid didn't even become the capital of Spain until sometime in the 1500s, I believe it was. So it was not a really significant Jewish community. There wasn't one back then. All right, so where are we going? Again, Jews were held, I mentioned government and commercial positions, and Jewish culture and learning thrived. And I don't know if any of you recognize, that is Maimonides. I'm sure you've all heard of him. I know you have. Moses ben Maimon was his name, and he's called the Rambam. And he lived in Cordoba, Spain, and those are the years roughly about when he lived there. So again, Cordoba was one of those 6 places that really was a stronghold for the Jews in that era. All right, by 1143 is when we really see Portugal becoming a separate kingdom. We still don't have Spain per se, but Portugal has now started to come into its own. And I found fascinating. I didn't know this. By 1300, they believe about 500,000 Jews lived in Iberian lands, and that is half the Jews of the world. And, many of us, well, I don't, but many of you have, I'm sure, some Sephardic roots. I overheard Esther mention something a few minutes ago. But it's such an important place in Jewish history. We don't realize just how major it was when you think about 500,000 or half the world's Jews living in this region. And again, most of them in the south, but not necessarily early on. Okay, and then what starts to happen, the Reconquest, La Reconquista in Spanish, started in the 11th century, but it was a series of military campaigns with the idea of taking Spain or Portugal and Spain back from the Moors, so away from the Islamic people that were there. And again, they gradually took control of the Iberian Peninsula. And so this is what it looked like by 1400. I think you saw a similar map earlier, but you have Portugal, Castile, Aragon, and Granada, that little bit of what's left of Moorish Spain. And that's kind of, we see when anti-Jewish discrimination is going to start. Started during the Crusades. We know there were, quite a bit of it during the Crusades. It was on and off. And then we'll see in a minute where it really starts getting ugly. By the early 13th century, Spanish Jews or Iberian Jews were required to wear yellow badges on their clothing. It sounds kind of, like an omen of what's to come 500, 600, whatever, 700 years later, 800, I guess. But again, you'll see the beginning of anti-Semitic, behavior. Of course, we've heard of these people. We knew about them when we learned about Columbus Day as kids, but they were we had Castile and we had Aragon. And when Ferdinand of Aragon married Isabella of Castile is when, that's when Spain became united into a single Catholic kingdom. And again, some of you may remember this from history or from Spanish class, los Reyes Católicos, the Catholic kings. And they were the ones who, not long, a few years after their marriage, created the Spanish Inquisition. I'm sure we all know quite a bit about that. The purpose of the Inquisition was, again, to maintain Catholic control of the new kingdom. Well, who's going to suffer as a result? Not only the Jews, we know about that, but the Muslims as well, as they suddenly become persona non grata in Spain. Well, I told Terry I wasn't going to say this. Probably one of the dumbest things these guys ever did was getting rid of the Jews and the Muslims, but that's a story for another day. All right, so we all know this, but again, just to put it in context, the Jews were now forced to convert to Catholicism or they'd be killed. And the Inquisition, again, torture, all kinds of horrible torture. What's his name? Quasimodo? No, was it Quasimodo? No. Who am I thinking of? I can't remember the name of the, Stuart will tell me in a minute.
Torquemada?
Torquemada, that's what I meant. Yes, thank you. I knew I wasn't getting the name right. Okay. Was that Ken? Thank you, Ken. I see Carol patting him on the shoulder, so it must have been Ken. Thanks. All right, so again, that was the Inquisition. And we've heard this story about how many Jews converted rather than, be killed. But so many of them, so they were called conversos, but so many of them secretly practiced their Judaism at home. And they were called Marranos or crypto Jews. And we're going to hear a little bit more about a community of Marranos a little bit later tonight, very contemporary kind of. So we know over the years, many people have discovered somewhere in there, maybe people doing their DNA now, that they have some Sephardic Jewish, something in their gene makeup. So we know a lot of the people who converted, still carry those genes. All right, so that's kind of taking us almost to the end. So 1492, not only did Columbus discover America, but the Alhambra Decree was what finally forced all of the unconverted Jews and Muslims to leave Spain. And 5 years later, and Carol will tell us a little bit more about how that came to be. Hold on a second. Okay, Stuart got it. Thank you. Sorry about that. The Portuguese decided they would, also force all the Jews and Muslims to convert to Catholicism. So again, some of the Jews had left Spain and gone to Portugal. By 1497, they all had to leave. And many of them we know, so especially those of you who've taken my class on Jewish immigration to the US, some of those Portuguese Jews ended up going to the New World, to South America, and eventually made their way to New York, New Amsterdam at the time, to, I'm leaving one out, to Savannah, actually. What am I thinking? So again, I think that's pretty much the history. That wasn't too long. And just again, just a quick glimpse of where did these Sephardic Jews go? Half the Jews of the world. Mostly they spread out all over the Mediterranean. So you'll see what we're going to talk about in a couple of months. Greece, big Jewish population in Greece and Italy, just lots of North Africa, certainly the Middle East is, Palestine, I guess. So just to give you a sense of where they went, even up into the Balkan Peninsula. So let's see, some of them turned up in what's now Bosnia. Sarajevo still has a big Jewish, well, small, but at one point had a big Jewish population. Okay, so that's kind of the quick historic overview, and we are off. So I hope you have your passports ready. We are off to visit Spain. So probably some of you have been to Toledo or Toledo, not to be confused with Ohio. Toledo, well, I'll give you a quick glimpse of what it looks like. Toledo was actually the capital of Castile. Madrid didn't become a capital for even long after Spain became a country, after the unification with Castile and Aragon. So Toledo was a very important city, and it had a lot of big Jewish population. So just to give you an idea where Toledo is, for those of you who've never been there, it's really about an hour from Madrid by car, by bus. So it's pretty much in the center of Spain. And just to give you an idea, this is just the driving distance. So as I say, it's an hour. Stuart and I actually were there probably more than 20 years ago. And we had rented a car in Madrid and then started touring the rest of Spain. So it was a quick drive to Toledo. And we actually, I think, stayed overnight for one night. So it gave us more time to explore it. Wonderful, wonderful place. All right, so here's a glimpse of Toledo. By the way, it is such a wonderfully preserved city. It is, I can't even remember what year, maybe 1999, it became a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And I don't know how many of you know much about these. The United Nations educational and social, anyway, they designate certain sites around the world, and some of them are natural places like national parks. Some of them are just places of historic significance, but there's sort of an international agreement that these places must be kept in their form and not, messed around with and so forth. So the whole of Old Toledo is a UNESCO, not just one building or one spot, but the whole of downtown Toledo, or not downtown, but Old Town Toledo. All right, so here's a glimpse of Toledo. I will shut up. Other than to say, some of you may have seen this El Greco painting. It's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art. And again, this was Toledo in 1600. And my husband pointed out to me today that I didn't remember this, but El Greco was criticized for having put the cathedral in the wrong spot. But anyway, this is his view of Toledo from 1600. And here's kind of what it looks like now. These are pretty current pictures. It's just beautiful. It's on the Tagus, or the Rio Tajo, I think it's called. That was, of course, me and Stuart and me. Again, just a few glimpses of just kind of overview of Toledo. And some of the old courtyards, this gorgeous architecture. So that just gives you a feel. All right, so let's talk about Jewish Toledo. All right, so it's believed to be the oldest Jewish settlement in Spain. It was supposedly known as the Second Jerusalem, and you'll see why in a minute. It had a third of its population was Jewish. Remember, this was the capital of Castile, the province of Castile. So by the 11th century, 40,000 Jews lived in Toledo. We think we have a lot of Jews in Bluffton, but and that's a lot of, a lot of people, a lot of Jews. So it was really, that was sort of the spot in which to be Jewish in Spain. And in its heyday, it had 11 synagogues, and 2 of them still exist, and we're going to see them. I'll show you some pictures, then we're going to see a quick video so you can really kind of get a tour of these beautiful, beautiful synagogues. Again, hopefully some of you have been there. And again, just we said earlier, they lived in peace with the Christians and the Muslims. It was just a very harmonious place to live in the Middle Ages. All right, so here's just a map of the city. You can see it's kind of surrounded by the river. It's kind of a wall. I guess it was a walled city. Yeah, and the circle or oval, whatever it is really where the Jewish quarter was. And I don't know if you can really see it, but it says Juderia or something. I guess it's Juderia, Juderia, I guess they would say. So again, was a pretty big Jewish quarter, literally. All right, so what was Jewish Toledo like? Well, it was certainly a center of Jewish learning. You had poets, writers, scholars. One of the famous ones, some of you have heard of, I'm sure you've heard rabbis mention, Yehuda Ha-Levi was a Jewish, it says physician, poet, philosopher. So he was very well known, one of many, many scholars in Toledo. And here's what it looks like today. And again, I'm just going to let you this is the Jewish quarter. Let you kind of take it in. So again, the narrow cobblestone streets, very medieval. And you'll see these street sign that identifies, these are new street signs, by the way. Spain has discovered in the last, I don't know, 25 years, whatever it is, that maybe it would be good to restore some of these Jewish sites, because if you do that, you'll get tourists, and with tourists come a lot of money. And so they've really taken great pains to point these places out and kind of, highlight them, I guess. So this is, again, this would be the, it's Barrio de la Juderia is the neighborhood. Barrio is a neighborhood of the Juderia in 1492, obviously commemorating when it kind of ended. Again, another sign, Juderia de Toledo, Juderia. All right, so here I want to show you real quick the two surviving synagogues. And one of them, it's the strangest name of any synagogue you've ever heard of. Originally it was called the Ibn Shushan Synagogue. Today, and almost since after the expulsion, it's been known as Santa María la Blanca, which means Saint Mary the White. And it was kind of taken over. Some of you, I'm sure, have been there. It doesn't look like much on the outside, but you'll see in a moment. So it was, as I said, built around 1180. Again, in that golden age when, and you'll see in a minute what a golden age it had to have been. So the Santa Maria la Blanca was the name it was given by the Catholics when they took it over and made it into a church. And I'm not quite sure when it was reinstated. It's not a functioning or working synagogue, but you can certainly, it's open to tourists, and it's become kind of a tourist site now. So this is a glimpse of the Ibn Shushan Synagogue, and you can certainly see the Moorish influence. It's magnificent. Doesn't look like anything on the outside, but just another shot of it. Maybe that's why they call it Saint Mary the White, Santa Maria la Blanca. And just some of the detail. And you'll see more of it in the video I'm going to show you in a few minutes. It's just a short video. We see like 4.5 minutes. All right, and then the second synagogue I mentioned was known as the Samuel Ha-Levi Abulafia Synagogue. And it was built a couple of hundred years later, so 1360. It's known now as Synagoga El Tránsito, or the El Tránsito Synagogue. El Tránsito just means the transit. I'm not quite sure where it got its name. But let's see who Samuel Ha-Levi Abulafia was. Very interesting man. He was born in Toledo, again, 1320, the height of the Golden Age. He was the treasurer for King Pedro, the King of Castile. Remember, still Castile then, not Spain. And by this time, we were already starting to see, if you remember, some of the anti-Jewish sentiment really starting. It was after the Crusades, or maybe during, maybe some of the Crusades were still happening. But he was the founder of the synagogue. And the story is, the church had really opposed this construction of this synagogue. But because he worked for the king, he was the treasurer, we know how important that is, the king allowed it to be built. So again, I want you to take a quick look at El Tránsito, the synagogue. The photo on the left was really a painting of what it probably looked like in its heyday. And this is what it looks like today, what's left of it. I think it too became a church and was restored, or is taken back to be a tourist site now. The ceiling, it's just magnificent. So again, you'll see more of it in a minute. And just look at that detail work. It's just, and the Hebrew inscriptions along the top. So it is, Stuart and I were fortunate. We got to visit both of these, and they are quite near each other. I can't remember exactly, but pretty much within walking distance. So again, that Jewish community was pretty small, or, a small area. Oh dear, not, okay. The phone doesn't ring, but of course now all right, Stuart's going to get it. Okay. And inside the El Tránsito Synagogue is this Jewish museum. So just a quick glimpse of some of what you'll see there. And again, we'll see a little bit more. So I'm about to play this video for you, I think. Oh, whoops. All right, so just the video I'm going to show you, the two videos I'm going to show you tonight are both part of a series by this gentleman named Ron D. Hart. He lives in New Mexico now. He's was a professor of anthropology. He's really a scholar on Sephardic Jews, and this is a book that he wrote. But, all right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop this share. Well, actually, I'm going to do a new share. And where is it? Uh-oh. I had it all ready to go. All right, bear with me a moment while I don't know, I know I had it already, but I'll get to it and I'll share it with you momentarily. You can probably hear it, but I'm going to get you. So I will. Okay. Oh, it was there all along. Okay. Never mind. All right. So here's the video. Can you all see it? Just nod your head. You see? Okay. Go ahead and play it. Put it in full screen. That's the gate, entrance gate to Toledo. See that? That's Santa Maria la Blanca, of course.
In Spain, Toledo was one of the most important Jewish communities. 1,000 years ago, under Muslim rule, the Jewish community thrived here. But then after the Christians took over, their circumstances began to change. And 500 years ago, Jews were expelled from Spain altogether. 2 synagogues remained from that time period. And we know where the old Jewish quarter was. Some of the houses are there, the streets. The even Shushan Synagogue was built in 1180 and is perhaps the oldest existing synagogue in Europe. Today is one of the few reminders of the Jewish presence in Toledo. And standing in the building, one is moved by the beauty of its columns. It is not the same as it must have been. Toward the front, where the Ark and the Torah were once located, we do see a Christian cross and other indications of Christian presence. The Jewish quarter of Toledo was attacked in the anti-Semitic riots of 1391, essentially destroying this vibrant community. Later, the firebrand evangelist Vicente Ferrer entered the Jewish quarter under armed guard and confiscated the even Shushan Synagogue in the name of the church. Its name was changed to Santa Maria la Blanca. Just down the street is the Sephardic Museum, which is located in the other surviving synagogue. Samuel Ha-Levi Abulafia, the treasurer of the king, built this synagogue in 1357, known today as El Tránsito. The ceiling has decorative patterns of inlaid ivory, and under the windows, atop the towering walls, long lines of psalms are written in Hebrew script. The Ark for the Torah has been preserved, as well as the richly carved plasterwork on the eastern wall. Every surface is ornately beautified. Along the south wall, we see the women's balcony, which would have been covered with latticework to isolate women from the gaze of men. Women could observe the liturgy, but they could not participate. In a patio outside of the building, lapidaries that once covered Jewish graves lie in the sun, bereft of the ones they were supposed to protect, but giving us some insight into the Jews who once lived here. Over the last 500 years, Jewish Spain has lived in the netherland of Sephardic memories. The hatred and distrust of Catholic Spain poised alongside the slowly withering nostalgia among the Sephardim for a life that once was. A mantle of silence fell over the rich Jewish heritage that had existed in this land. Synagogues were converted to churches, and Torah scrolls, menorahs, books, and other indications of Jewish life were carried away or destroyed. Most of the exhibits in the Sephardic Museum today have been brought from Sephardic Morocco and other places. The bare remains of Toledo's Jewish past in these 2 synagogues have been resurrected in recent decades as the Spanish began to recognize the hidden treasure in their midst. They saw the potential of attracting tourism, both Jews and Christians. The mystique of Sepharad has never quite faded, And today, shopkeepers and the tourism industry have parlayed it into a highly successful business sector. The streets that were the commercial center of the Jewish quarter now are lined by souvenir shops and restaurants for tourists.
Okay. All right, I'm going to stop that and go back to the other. Oops. Okay. All right, so just moving on. Can everyone see the PowerPoint now?
Yeah, you're good, Karen.
Okay, I'm just, oops, why am I not? It's not letting me move. Oh, there it goes. Okay, so just a quick, what else is there to see and do if you're going to go to Toledo? Just to give you some more enticement. That, of course, is the entry gate we saw earlier in the movie, in the film. The monastery, just some beautiful, beautiful medieval architecture. And this is the mosque, one of the mosques. I don't know how many are still preserved. And El Greco, I believe, lived. He certainly painted in Toledo. But if you enjoy art, I mean, you must visit the El Greco Museum. And this is another museum that's art and architecture, ethnographic museum in the historic center of Toledo. Okay, and it was once a hospital before, back in the Middle Ages. All right, I think that is it for me for a while. So we're packing our bags and we are on our way to Barcelona. And I am going to mute myself and turn it over to you.
So, can you hear me? Rick, shake your head.
You're
Okay,
good, Joan.
good. Welcome to Barcelona, the next stop of our travel tour. Many of you probably have been to Barcelona. This is where it is. It is a major cultural center, cultural, economic, financial center of Southwest Europe. It is a very cosmopolitan area. It is the busiest European port. The international airport in Barcelona serves over 50 million visitors every year. Next slide, please. This is a quick view of the city. And I would just point out that the two red arrows are the areas of particular Jewish interest in the city. And of course, we will talk about them as we go through our tour. Barcelona is known for its art, architecture, beaches, food, and nightlife. Go ahead, I'm sorry, Karen. So when we got to Barcelona, we spent 3 days. We were on a back-to-back cruise, and the first one was an overnight, and then on the second part of the cruise, we spent another day. One of the first things that, particularly in a city as large as Barcelona, that we like to do sometimes is do the hop-on, hop-off tour so that you can kind of get an overview, because obviously in the 3 days we were there, we weren't going to be able to see everything in detail. But the one thing that really struck us that on that first day on the hop-on, it was a demonstration day in Barcelona. And of course, most of you are familiar with the Catalonian people would like to become independent. Heaven knows we have seen a lot of demonstrations in this country recently. Maybe some of their demonstrations aren't that peaceful, but I can honestly say wherever we went that day, we saw very happy, singing, waving people, saying hello. I mean, a lot of businesses were closed. It was a Sunday, so some were closed anyway, but because of the demonstration. So, but it was remarkable to us. Okay, so now we're going to take a quick glimpse of Barcelona. And much as what Karen did, this is the first landmark that most tourists want to identify and visit is the Las Ramblas. It is about 3/4 of a mile long. It is a pedestrian tree-lined street. The streets are filled. Next slide, please. You can see the streets, they're filled with markets and people and monuments and museums, the theater, the shops, street arts, bars. It's just very crowded. And in fact, when we were there, it was a lot more crowded because the cruise ships were in, and it gets incredibly crowded. Go ahead to the next one, please. This to me was the most amazing thing. Of course, it is the human statue art. And I don't know what you all know about it, but I found out that these artists have to actually apply. Then they get accepted. They are then assigned a location and a time that they may perform. And as still as they are, the only time that they can move at all is if you toss coins at them. So they don't move unless you give them money, which I thought was kind of neat. Okay, we're going to move on to the oldest part of the city now. Next slide, please, Karen. The Barri Gothic, or the Gothic Quarter. Very much would remind you of what you just saw in Toledo. It is over 2,000 years old. It includes remains of the city's Roman wall, includes El Cal, which is the Jewish quarter, many small streets that open up into squares. And of course, each square has its own story to tell. In the Gothic quarter, you will find lots of museums, the Museum of Barcelona, the Cathedral of Barcelona, and much more. The next area that, of course, you're going to want to visit is La Sagrada Familia. It was designed by Gaudí, began in 1882. Gaudí lived actually from 1852 to 1926. There is a lot of hope that maybe, just maybe, they could complete it by 2026, which would be the centenary of his death. This year, they are hoping to complete the Tower of the Virgin Mary. And of course, here you don't see all the scaffolding, but if you were there, you would see it because they're constantly working. And I would add that right across the street, there was a great candy store that we visited. Moving on, another World Heritage site, just like previous, is the Casa Mila and the Casa Batlló. This is a public park system. It took 14 years to build. It was officially opened as a public park in 1926. Absolutely beautiful. And you'll see all sorts of tributes to Gaudí there as well. Now we're going to move on to Jewish Barcelona. Before the 15th century, Spain had one of the largest and most prosperous Jewish populations in Europe, as you've already heard. As we go on and look at the Jewish quarter in El Cal, which is part of that Barri Gothic, you see it's pretty small. And unfortunately, there's not a whole lot left of it. Very little remains. They continue to search and find more things. Within the quarter, we'll see a few of the streets now. El Cal, it did play a large part of the Jewish history of Spain. The name El Cal comes from the Hebrew word kahal, which means community or congregation. Kind of hard to tell what's what when you're on your own. So we were really fortunate, as you'll see in the next slide. This is Marty with Addie, our guide. We hired him and did a private tour of Jewish Barcelona. It was really worth it to us because a lot of the things that we saw, and he didn't just show us just Jewish because he did that whole quarter, the Barri Gothic. So we got to see a lot, really great, outstanding tour.
He was Israeli.
So. And he was Israeli. I forgot to say that. So it was really cool. And as we go on, we'll see more of the Jewish quarter. And there were some of the in the historic Jewish remnants. There are about 4,000 Jews in Barcelona during the 13th century. Most of them worked as doctors, they worked as scientists, scholars, and merchants. By 1424, most of them were leaving, and by 1492, all Jews, as you know, had either fled or converted. So for the next 500 years, there were no Jews. This slide is kind of interesting. It's one of the buildings in the Gothic quarter, which again is made up of those small, narrow streets. This is the Placa St. Lou, a medieval building which dated back to the 15th century. What makes it so interesting? As you look at the next slide, look carefully and you can see the ancient Hebrew lettering or inscriptions on the wall. Well, where did those stones come from? They came from the Jewish cemetery, which is on Montjuïc Hill, which we will see a little bit later on. But when it went into disrepair, they took some of those stones and used them in these. Never could I have seen this without Addie, our guide. I mean, you know, you're standing there and he's going, look right there. You see it? Amazing. And moving on, of course, the most famous piece of ancient Barcelona Judaism is the ancient synagogue, the Synagogue Mayor. It is said to be the oldest synagogue in Spain by many, and others believe it to have been the oldest in all of Europe. They believe it originated in the 6th century. The actual synagogue has 2 rooms. In the first, you can see archaeological remains, and in the second, you will see where they actually hold some religious ceremonies there, and there is a museum of such. A lot of Judaic is displayed. There is no congregation that actually practices there at this point, but as I said, they do use it for particular special events. I can't imagine going there for something. They also do give tours of that daily. Once the Jews were expelled from the synagogue, they started building on top, layer upon layer, and the building became, at one point it was a laundry.
The Spanish built.
Yeah, the Spanish built additional floors, and that was when it was used as a laundry, when it was used for storage and so on. And in 1996, they discovered the original synagogue. And what you're looking at there is you're looking at the foundation of the original building, the Roman walls, and you can actually see that. It was just amazing to see. And in the next slide, we'll see some of the beautiful Judaica that is still on display in the synagogue. So that is a big piece of Jewish Barcelona. Next slide, please. Samuel Harsadi inscription. Found it very interesting. And of course, you're going to say, well, who was Samuel Harsadi? He was a rabbi who lived in the 13th century. Why is he known today? Well, he built one of the first hospitals, evidently. So they have this beautiful inscription, which is made up of 3 tablets as you look. The first tablet is inscribed in Hebrew. Now, what you're looking at there is a replica. The original is put in a museum near, and it is this actual, the tablets are near the synagogue that we just visited. The second tablet is in the Spanish language translation. And then the third talks about, it gives a further translation in English, a Hebrew translation, and the Catalan transcription. The quick sort of translation is this holy rabbi, Samuel Harsadi, living eternally, the stone was found with other remains from the time that Jews were living in this house. So this is where it actually was. Moving on, we will visit Montjuïc, the Hill of the Jews. The literal translation is the Jewish mountain. It was a very prominent Jewish cemetery from around the 9th century. And those stones that we saw on the wall actually came from this cemetery. Today, the mountain towers over the harbor and you get beautiful views of the harbor and the city. Going up there, the road sort of winds and you'll pass the National Museum of Catalonia, parks, and many other museums. It was just a beautiful drive, and just being able to look out over the city from there was just an incredible experience. Our wonderful guide also took us to see the other historic remnants of Jewish life. And I know of only one other person who's actually on this Zoom who saw the one in the furniture store, and that's Carol and Ken. They are the only ones that I know. You wander through this olive furniture store, and you wander, it's wander here, wander there, and in the very back corner, you can actually see some stone that was part of the ancient mikveh. So I thought that was really kind of neat to see. And again, something we probably would not have done on our own, or found on our own, I should say. You'll also see pieces of tombstones throughout the city, as we said, and lots of Hebrew inscriptions throughout the city. So there's not a whole lot left, unfortunately. But, and I say but, because modern Jewish Barcelona is totally different. So today you've got about 15,000 Jews living in Barcelona. Several thousand of them are Israelis who have moved to Barcelona and Catalonia in recent years. This is amazing. I kind of think of it as like the umbrella over the whole Jewish community. The Comunidad Israelita de Barcelona, and pardon my killing pronunciations, they kind of own and operate pretty much everything that's Jewish, except for what the Chabad controls, and we'll talk about that also. It was actually founded in 1918, the Comunidad. The actual synagogue opened in 1954. It was the first synagogue in Spain in 500 years. The synagogue, the actual building is 5 stories as we go on. They manage it. They own and operate a school with about 300 students. We'll see they have 2 prayer halls, which we will see as well. They manage 3 Jewish cemeteries outside of the city. They also, I said the school, the cemeteries, they run a country club for sport and social activities as well. So when I say they oversee the Jewish population, they really and truly do. The next slide will show us the main sanctuary, which is part of the Synagogue Maimonides. This is the Sephardic, and they have 2 views of it. They have daily services every day. The second sanctuary is the Ashkenazi. They only have services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In the lobby of the building, you will also see a beautiful tablet, which is in Hebrew and in Spanish, which dedicates the building to Maimonides. So I said that was the one part of Jewish Barcelona. Now we're going to come to the more modern, even the Chabad of Barcelona. They arrived in 1999. To tell you how large it has grown. Okay, we're all thinking Passover because it's this week. In a normal year, the Chabad hosts a Seder for over 800 guests, which I just found amazing. They also have a giant menorah lighting in the Jewish quarter every year during Hanukkah. The community continues to grow. The rabbi's wife, I read an interview with her, and she said that when they arrived in 1999, there were 3 kosher families. Today, over 90% of all the Jews in Barcelona keep kosher. and we'll find out why in a minute. They have opened in the, next slide, please. In the last few years, a Chabad house. It has a cafe, which serves coffee and cakes. They have free Wi-Fi. They welcome visitors from all over. Obviously, it is a major Jewish tourist center to visit if you are observant. They also have services, regular services, and again, they're welcoming guests from all over the world. And this was, I was so disappointed the day we went past it. This is in the Jewish Quarter. It is a unique shop that they run. It was closed the day that we were there, but now I know what they sell, what they do. They have unique Judaica for sale. They sell Jewish wines. And also within it, I understand they have 3-dimensional exhibits of Jewish history. So obviously, when we go back, I would love to see that. The next slide tells us something also for anyone who travels and is Jewish, travels and tries to be observant there. It's called Jaffe, and I don't know why it's with a Y, but it is Jewish observant friendly establishments. And you can find Jaffe listings for other cities. So what does it do? Well, it is an international movement to identify establishments offering service to Jewish guests. Currently, there are 5 synagogues that they can send you to, 9 kosher eateries, restaurants, and 14 kosher or Jaffe hotels. So Jaffe, I mean, I looked it up, and there is a Jaffe in Miami that talks about that, and in other cities around the world. So what's ahead for programs for tourists? Well, going back to the Comunidad, these are 2 new programs. Mosaica, which began in 2008, which is pretty recent if you think about it in terms of Jewish life there. They promote Jewish culture, the revival through publications, artistic happenings, literature festivals, and exhibitions. And then the second part is Toldot, which is actually a branch of Mosaica, which is located in a building in the old Jewish Quarter, in a 14th century building. And again, they serve food, they offer Jewish tour. And what I found when I was reading is that this Comunidad, which was their main focus, was on the Jews that live in Barcelona, have now branched out to include happenings and events to bring more Jewish tourists, because, as Karen said before, tourists bring money, and that they like. So there are lots of new programs from the synagogues and so on. And that, my friends, is Jewish Barcelona. And I'm going to now mute myself, and you're off to your next destination.
Okay. All right, give me a moment. I will have to go to a new presentation with so many pictures. Hang on. Hang on. Trying to get rid of this. Okay. Okay. I am going to take you, and then we're going to go to Portugal after this. I'm going to take you to sorry, can you, hang on. Let me just, can everybody see whoops. Does the PowerPoint come up?
Not yet, Karen.
Okay, I see I know what I did wrong. Okay, hang on. I'm trying to get to, new share. Okay, hang on. Okay, forgot to share it with you. Okay, how about now? We good?
Good.
Okay.
Good.
So I don't know. First of all, those of you who studied Spanish will say it's probably pronounced Girona, which in the rest of Spain it would be. However, Catalunya, which is where Girona, you'll see in a minute, where Barcelona is. This is not far from Barcelona, by the way. It's pronounced Girona. It's very much influenced by the fact that it's so close to France. So why am I not advancing? Okay. Uh-oh. Bear with. Okay, so where is Girona? Again, it's up here in the very northeastern corner, very close to France. And you'll see how close it is to Barcelona in a moment. Whoops. All right. This just gives you the relative distances. So Stuart and I went there. We were actually going on a cruise from Barcelona, and we flew to Barcelona 2 or 3 days ahead of time, rented a car, and drove to Girona. And it was, well, we stopped somewhere along the way, but it's an hour and a quarter, I guess. No, hour and a half from the airport, and about an hour and a quarter from the port, but also very easy to connect there by train and bus. Again, just I found this gives you an idea how quick the trains and buses are. So pretty easy to get to. Okay, and this is a map of the city of Girona, and you'll see some pictures of it in a minute. That circle is really the old Jewish quarter. But I don't know if you can see. Let me try to point it out to you. Let me get the little laser pointer. But it says Cal Ju. I don't even know how to say it, Jew. I speak Spanish, but not Catalan. So it's there's the Jewish Museum, and as Joan said, the Cal is the quarter, Kahal, the Jewish quarter. So again, pretty much this area. And again, I looked at this map, and I just wanted to share this because you can see all these golden colored pointers, dots, whatever they're called, with the Star of David. Every one of those is a Jewish site in Girona. And as I said, I imagine many of you never even heard of Girona, and yet it was such an important Jewish community back in the Middle Ages. All right, so this is a glimpse. I'm going to be quiet and let you it's just a beautiful, beautiful city. It's right on a river called the Onyer River, Onyer. Oops. That's kind of in just one of the areas in the kind of a little plaza in the old quarter, the old city. Cathedral, of course. And I don't know if this looks familiar to anybody. I've never seen this, but Game of Thrones, if any of you watch Game of Thrones, my understanding is that, I don't know how large, but that portions of it have been filmed right in Girona. So some of you will be able to say, oh, I saw that. So anyway, all right, so let's talk about its Jewish history. Again, this goes back to the 9th century. Again, much smaller than Toledo, obviously, but the 13th century had about 1,000 Jews. So it was, probably, I don't know how many non-Jews there were, but it was a fairly large city. Now, again, this isn't in southern Spain. This is, as I said, very close to France, but you still had a lot of Moors there as well. But again, by the late 14th century, so in the 1380s and 90s, you began to see anti-Semitic violence starting up. All right, but in the heyday, again, in that golden age, Jews were prosperous. They were very influential. There was a synagogue. There was, I'm just going to tell you, I have a synagogue. There were baths, a butcher shop. These are all Jewish butcher shop, bookbinders and sellers, shoemakers, tailors, weavers, midwives, and money lenders, of course, because Christians could not lend money, as you may probably know. All right, and again, this community just thrived for 600 years, and again did 1492, like the rest of Spain. All right, so here is somebody you've probably heard of, Rabbi Nachmanides. We hear him quoted quite a bit. Unlike Maimonides, who is the Rambam, he's the Ramban, I guess, because his name starts with N. So Rabbi Nachmanides, he was born in Girona, as you see, in 1194. He was, I think, the chief rabbi, not only of Girona, but maybe of all of Catalonia. I'm going to show you again another little quick video, and it'll talk more about his influence. He was a renowned rabbinic authority, but he was a Kabbalist. So he was one of the great rabbis of the Kabbalah, studied Kabbalah. And they'll talk about this in the movie as well, why he left for Palestine in 1267 and eventually died there. And one of the things he's noted for, apart from his work in Girona, is he helped reestablish the Jewish community in Jerusalem after it was destroyed by the Crusaders. So that is there. And again, this is very new. Stuart and I were there in 2014. So this is new. It was new to us when I just read about it. There's now a Chabad house in Girona as of 2016. So again, Chabad, we know, gets to places you would never even think of. All right. So what is there to see and do in Jewish Girona today? So I'm just going to let you, you can walk the Jewish quarter, El Kal again. And one of the things that's very interesting that we had read about was that in some of these old buildings, even though the Jews have been gone for 500 years plus, you can still see on some of the doorways the places where the mezuzahs once hung, which is fascinating. So again, you wouldn't know, if you didn't know to look for them, you wouldn't find them. And some other views of the Kal. I think this is similar to a picture I saw, or I showed you earlier. Again, some of it's so well preserved. That's the amazing. Well, you'll see it in the video too. You walk there and you sense this history that was once there. Okay, so what else? There is a Jewish museum, and it's actually built on the site of an ancient synagogue. And Stuart and I, that was one of the few places you really can go visit and learn about the Jewish community there. So that's the inner courtyard, which is just, actually this was taken from a second story, kind of a window opening looking down. Beautiful, beautiful. And you can see from the picture, they sometimes have concerts there, different programs. These are some of the artifacts in the synagogue. Some of you may recognize the one on the right. I think it's Maisel. Some of you, I can't think of his name. Much more contemporary, though, is the point. So again, this is some of the. And again, this is not left from Spain. These are, you'll see in the video, things they've gotten from Morocco. But again, just a model of the community as it was. And these are some actual tombstones that were found, go back to the Middle Ages. Again, so that's sort of Jewish marble. Oh, and then you still can visit the mikveh. And this is these are the Arab baths, which you're going to see a little bit of in the video. So let me stop for a moment. Give me a moment to regroup. I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to share a video, I hope. Or did I lose it again? Oh, no. All right. Hold on. Nope. Okay. So let me find, I had these all open, but I don't know, I did. Stuart's telling me from the other room I had it open. I will get it to you in a moment. And just let me share it with you, and then we'll be good to go. Okay, here we go. Same gentleman as before.
Standing before this bastion of stone walls of the memory of the medieval Girona, the thing that strikes me is the silence of the place. And it makes me wonder what would have been like when the Jews were here. This silence, it seems to me, is the inheritance of the anti-Semitism that cut short a vibrant Jewish community in this place and drove Jews out. But before they left, they made a mark that is felt around the world today, which is Kabbalah. The Girona school of Kabbalah was the most important one in Europe. Maimonides was the leader, and he and other scholars such as Azrael and Ezra wrote and made drawings about the mystical relationships between people and the divine.
A branch of my family came from Girona many, many, many generations ago. So Girona is such a beautiful place. Every time I go, I have a very special feeling when you walk on the cobblestone streets, the narrow alleys. You have the sense of history. It really envelops you.
Although Jews have not lived in Girona for more than 500 years, their houses remain, and the old Juderia or Col is one of the best preserved medieval Jewish quarters in Europe. And along these stone-lined streets, Kabbalists, medical doctors, and shopkeepers would have strolled to their houses and synagogues.
You can see the mezuzah space.
In 1263, church officials in Barcelona challenged the Jewish community to debate whether Jesus was the Messiah. And as the great rabbi of Catalonia, Maimonides presented the Jewish argument. The debate went on for 4 days, and Maimonides argued so strongly that Christian leaders were enraged. His life was in danger, and he fled to Israel. He would never walk the streets of his hometown again. But the traditions continued, and the apex was reached 20 years later when Moses de Leon made known to the world the Zohar, the classic statement of Kabbalistic thought. A window into everyday Jewish life from this time period can be seen in the public baths.
These are the Jewish baths of Girona. It's very interesting that they are called the Arab baths, even though when this was constructed, the Arabs had been driven away 400 years before. There is a beautiful central pool with columns, and if you look at the ceiling has encrusted a Magen David. Of course, since these are public baths, there were times for men and times for women.
Okay, I'm going to fast forward a little bit further. I don't want to watch the whole thing. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Wrong place. Okay.
Back in Girona, the Museum of Jewish History preserves and celebrates Jewish life. Some of the items show general Jewish history, such as the reproduction of the relief showing the spoils of the sack of Jerusalem that is in the Arch of Titus in Rome. But most items reflect the Jewish history of this corner of Spain, from engraved stones and burial slabs to a uniquely illuminated Haggadah. This region was famous for the beauty of the illuminated religious manuscripts made for wealthy families, from Haggadot to prayer books and bound Torah volumes.
Okay, let me fast forward again. Okay.
Along these streets, Jews come from all over the world to remember Maimonides and the Kabbalists, but all is not memory. A Jewish family has recently moved into the former Jewish quarter of Girona and established the Jewish Center.
So again, that's the okay.
Girona feels like a very quiet place, being the place where the Kabbalists developed. So there is that sense of spirituality, mystical Judaism. Then you get a very special feeling.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there and stop the share. All right. So that's some interesting, a little closer look at Girona. All right, let me share again. Okay, so let me just keep going. I'm just going to give you a quick, some other things. Again, I'll let you just look quickly because there's a lot to do and see in Girona. I won't go through all of it, but these are some things you can do. You can walk the medieval wall. I'll let you take a couple of beautiful, beautiful. This is looking into the city. No. Okay. Does not want to go. Oh dear. Okay, there we go. Again, just a wider shot of that. My panorama, Stuart's panorama, actually. And that's a close, and then you can see one of the big churches there, actually. And this is the same thing from the wall, but looking outside the city. It's just a beautiful region. And then there's some festivals you can go to. So we happened to be there the weekend. There was some, I don't remember what kind of festival it was, but that actually is me in the, I don't know if you can see, that's me in the white hat. And the man next to me, Stuart, thought that was him. It is not. It's a local man who saw me watching. They were sort of all parading around and to music and clapping and singing. And he asked me to come join them. So Stuart took that shot. And then also, again, same weekend we were there. Maybe the two were tied together. There's a beautiful flower festival. And just to point out just how creative it is, it's apparently a very well-known event. People come from all over that part of Spain. This is actually the one on the right is actually made to look like paint spilling out of paint cans. So that's a painter's palette up on the top. And then those are they're little pots of plants, but they were put together to make it look like, as I say, spilled paint. And just these creative, beautiful flower exhibits. This one is in a building and it had clouds hanging over it, one on the left and artificial clouds. And this is another one. And then finally, this is another one. It was just all done in purple, but this is all over the city. I mean, everywhere you look, they have competition. So they're like the 64, they are numbered. So that was something else. And then just again, give you another reason to go to Girona. If you happen to be cruising in or out of Barcelona, there are two other really important areas we went to. And I just want to show you on the map, Girona being right here, we went to Cadaqués and Figueres. So there are three places I want to call out to you. Besalú, which has a mikveh. We did not get there, but apparently very close to Girona. And then Cadaqués is this beautiful, you'll see it in a moment, the seaside town where Salvador Dali and his wife Gala had their home. And then in Figueres, which I think is where Salvador Dali was from originally, beautiful museum. So I'm just going to show you a couple of quick pictures of those. And then that's it. We'll go on to someplace else. Let Carol tell us about Portugal. So again, that's Besalú. Beautiful. This is Cadaqués. It just took my breath away. It's just one picture of it, but magnificent seascapes. We decided we actually opted to take the scenic route. You can get there by fast highway. This is Dali's house. And actually, if you try to give you an orientation, I guess, I don't know if I took the picture or Stuart did, but our backs are to the sea, to the Mediterranean. And it doesn't look like much on the outside, at least from that view. But on the inside, it's a very intriguing home. So this is one of the courtyards that you cannot see from the street, the promenade along the sea. But he uses this egg theme quite a bit. So this is one of his outer buildings. I have a lot of pictures of it. I'm just only going to show you a couple. Yet another patio, and you can see another egg in the middle. And then this is a couple of the interior rooms. That's this little small living room, and that's the bedroom. By the way, if you do want to go there, you have to make reservations and buy your tickets well in advance because they will only take, everything's by appointment. They'll only take 8 people at a time through the house. So you can't just drive there and expect to get a tour. You might get lucky, but chances are you won't. So again, all right. And then just to show you the museum in Figueres. And Figueres is maybe another 45-minute drive. So just to sort of share with you, by the way, the museum was an old theater and they had taken it over, and Dali was helped design and, oversaw the installations within the museum. So it's been open for quite a while. That I believe must be one of his cars, but I won't swear to that. And again, just 2 other interior views, but lots and lots of his artwork. Very fascinating museum. And that's really it for me. And we are off to Portugal. So I'm going to, again, turn it over to Carol and let her. Okay, thank you, Carol. Oops.
Okay, well, I had the pleasure of visiting Portugal a couple of years ago, so it's a fairly recent trip for me, and it's a fairly small country. It is only 35,000 square miles, and it's 1/6 of the Iberian Peninsula. And until the end of the 15th century, Portugal had over 200,000 Jews, and that comprised over 1/5 of the population. Now, in 1495, the King of Portugal passed, and his son, Emmanuel I, became the King of Portugal. And he was to marry the daughter of King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. And a condition of his marriage to Isabella, she was also named Isabella, the daughter, a condition of the marriage was that Portugal had to go along with Spain and expel all of the Jews. So until that time, the Jews had had a wonderful life in Portugal. They were prominent in the community. They were professors. They were scientists. They were businessmen. They were doctors. And they were 1/5 of Portugal's population. Many had come over from Spain in 1492 as well. The various Spanish explorers, as you know, they were great sailors. They relied heavily on Jews. Vasco da Gama and others had Jews as advisors and helpers. And just to show you how beautiful the whole place is, it was just lovely. I will say, if you plan to go, make sure you can walk a lot of steps. Let's just stop there 1 second. This is the statue. This is the monument to all the Portuguese explorers, the Vasco da Gama monument. And it's just magnificent. And behind it, there is a big mosaic of all the world, and it shows where all the various Portuguese explorers traveled. And there's statues on all sides of this. It's just magnificent.
I apologize. It's forwarding on its own and I didn't mean for it to. Okay.
Oh, that's quite all right.
Go ahead. All right.
So when the Jews were expelled, they again went all over the world, and few that were left were told that they could convert. Some of those were called crypto Jews, others Marranos, conversos. But today, most of the Marranos are up in the north part of the country, and they really are not Jews. They celebrate some things, but not many. The men are not circumcised, but they do celebrate a little bit of Purim and the high holidays. Up in Porto, which is up in the north, there are only about 200 Jews today. And there is a synagogue, but it's not its own building. The only actual synagogue that's in Portugal today is in Lisbon. And this is the synagogue. It's called Shahari Tikva. And I was very fortunate to get to go on a tour of it. Now, as you can see, it's set back in a courtyard. There is a law in Portugal that only Catholic churches can face the street. So being that this is a synagogue, it is hidden behind a large fence. And I got there a little early, and you had to have a reservation, and you had to make it with your passport and give your passport number and everything. And even though the guard was in the guardhouse, he would not let us in until the time that we had our appointment to go in and see it. Okay, next slide. This is inside that synagogue, the Shahari Tikva Synagogue. And it really was beautiful inside.
Just
And
another,
they give tours all the time, but again, you must have a reservation. And this is a Jewish street in Alfama, a medieval Jewish quarter. And as you can see, it says Jewish street.
you can see Rua, by the way, you think of French rue as street. That's
Yeah.
Cata. That's, well, no, it's not Catalan, Portuguese, I apologize. Never mind. We're in Portugal now, sorry. Okay.
There is a memorial in Lisbon to the Jews, and it was installed in 2008 to commemorate the Jewish massacre of 1506. Interesting, Portugal was neutral in World War II, and it took in over 50,000 Hungarian Jewish refugees in World War II. Today, there are fewer Jews in Portugal than in many Jewish apartment buildings in Jews in apartment buildings in New York City. So very, very few Jews that are left. Now, Belmonte and Porto, that's a fine. Porto is a lovely, lovely city. But again, there are less than 200 Jews that are there today. And it was very interesting. And we visited all the major cities up and down the coast. It was just lovely. So this is in Porto, the synagogue that's there. We did not go to that. And again, the same type of Jewish small streets, the cobblestones that you saw in Spain. And there are Jewish museums, and there's going to be a new Holocaust museum soon. And this town of Belmonte is up in the north part, and that is where a lot of these Marrano Jews now live. But they have not really been brought into the fold of Judaism. They, again, have some Jewish traditions, but others they do not adhere to. Today, Portugal will recognize Jews who are descendants of Jews that were expelled, and they can come back, which is a wonderful thought. So that was approved in 2015.
Is it? Oh, okay.
Yes, and this is the little synagogue, Bet Eliyahu Synagogue in Belmonte. And there's a little Jewish museum there as well, but I did not get to go to that. Okay,
Thank you.
that's it for Portugal.
All
But
right.
again, remember, Portugal is Lisbon was gorgeous. It was very modern, much more so than I expected. Beautiful, beautiful place. But the steps, lots and lots of steps and very steep streets. So if you're going, good walking shoes are in order.
Okay. All right. We're gonna.
So we are off to our final stop, Gibraltar, and
So they can hear you.
yeah, I'm on
Yeah,
here.
you're on. I can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so we're on our final stop, and obviously a good introduction was the cruise ships, because that's why most people go to Gibraltar. They're there on a cruise. Where is Gibraltar? It is located at the southern tip of the Iberian Peninsula. Spain is to the north and Morocco to the south. Gibraltar is home to over 32,000 people today. And next slide, please. And we say welcome as we there. as Marty and I entered. Gibraltar is a very heavily fortified British air and naval base. I don't know if you realize that. It guards the Strait of Gibraltar, and it is the only entrance to the Mediterranean Sea from the Atlantic Ocean. And as we move on, it is 3 miles long, about 3/4 of a mile wide. The total area is 2.6 square miles. So it's really tiny. And of course, it is totally dominated by the Rock of Gibraltar. As you look at the blue circle, that is the area where Jewish life is centered in Gibraltar. Okay, now we're going to take a quick peek at Gibraltar. Once you enter, you get off your cruise ship and you walk into town. It's a very short, easy walk, even for old Joan and Marty. It's a very, very busy cruise ship terminal. Okay, and this is the main street. You could see the British influence. Lots of shops. Well, I loved the phones, and it was just really cool to see that, because right away you got that British feel. And then as you continued to walk down Main Street, which is on the next slide, it is filled with many, many stores, restaurants, shops. You definitely saw the British influence, particularly when we shopped in Marks and Spencer. So this is the main street. You walk down and there's shops everywhere and streets going to the right and to the left. As you continue on, you will come to the cable car. And of course, if you're going to the Rock, you're going to most likely take the cable car. You can get there other ways, but most visitors do this. It's 412 meters up the cable car. It takes about 6 minutes to get to the top of the Rock, and it runs continuously. There is the Rock. It is 200 million years old Jurassic limestone. Next slide, please.
Oh, we said.
Oh, the Barbary apes. While you're there, you must go visit the Barbary apes. They are the only monkeys that are living wild in all of Europe. And just like you don't feed the alligators here in Sun City, you don't feed the Barbary apes. They're heavy fines if you try to.
We don't feed them. Okay.
Moving on. There are a lot of things to see once you get up on the Rock. This is new since 2018. It is the Skywalk. It's pretty high there, and you got to not be too afraid of heights, because literally when you walk out there, you're standing over the cliff and it's a straight drop down. So, the faint of heart might not want to go to the Skywalk. Also new is the Windsor Suspension Bridge. It has a lot of fun walking trails. All of this is on the Rock. A big portion of the Rock is the nature reserve, which is in the upper Rock portion. You can see the Apes Den there, St. Michael's Cave, the tunnels that were used by the British Army during World War II. And if you really are feeling good, you can walk all those steps up there. Kind of cool. Another thing to see in Gibraltar is Europa Point. It is the most southern point of Gibraltar. While there, you would visit the Trinity Lighthouse, which has been in continuous operation since 1841. You could visit the chapel of Nuestra Señora de Europa, which is the shrine of the Lady of Europe. And you could also visit the mosque of the custodian of the holy mosques. And standing there, you get an absolutely incredible view of the African coastline from Europa Point. Another thing that's kind of cool to visit while you're there is Casemate Square. It is located at the northern end of Main Street. It is the largest public space in all of Gibraltar. It is a very popular gathering place. due to the many restaurants and shops that are there. They host cultural events, festivals, parties take place there as well. So moving on to Jewish Gibraltar. Who knew? Not me, that there were Jews in Gibraltar when we went there. Jews began, well, they were first, of course, we all know Gibraltar was first settled by the Moors in the Middle Ages. And the first Jews began returning in 1713 afterwards. And we had the early presence. The first census was there were about 575. By 1878, there were over 1,500 Jews in Gibraltar. So there was a very nice presence. Today, however, it is a totally different story. And I love this. It is largely Orthodox, but as you look at that picture, that is a picture of the chief rabbi from Israel visiting Gibraltar. And I thought that was really cool. So the population is just growing like crazy. Between 2008 and 2011, the Jewish population increased by 25%, and it continues to multiply. Today, there are about 750 Jews in Gibraltar, and they say that they have the infrastructure to handle over 2,000 Jewish people living there. So I think that's kind of cool. They say that the Jews in Gibraltar have a very strong sense of Jewish identity. And as we look on, we see that I think that should tell us that there is a Jewish primary school, the mikveh, and everything revolves around Shabbat. Shabbat is very important. Now, one other, on the next slide, you'll see, this is the Jews Gate Cemetery. Remember, we looked at the nature reserve. This is in the nature reserve, but you have to kind of search to find it because it's actually sort of hidden behind this big, huge forest of trees. But it would certainly be something to see. And the next slide is what we call a serendipitous meeting or moment. And I have to kind of back up a minute. Normally, I really plan out what we're going to do in great detail at every port. Well, for Gibraltar, we were going to go take the cable up to the rock. We get off the ship, and the first thing we are told by everybody is, don't waste your time. The day is very overcast. Spend your day in town and just enjoy. So that was what Marty and I planned to do. We started walking, and what do I see but a gentleman in a kippah? So what do? I'm a Jewish woman. I have to go ask him, are there Jews here? And it turns out, wonder of wonders, he takes us to the synagogue. This gentleman was the former president of Kal Kadosh Sha'ar Hashemayim, I have to use the pronunciation, known as the Great Synagogue. It is the first synagogue to operate there since the expulsion from Spain in Portugal in 1492. It was founded, in the next slide you'll see, the Great Synagogue. Founded in 1724 by Rabbi Nieto from London. It is affiliated with the Orthodox movement.
Going too
And
fast.
the actual present building you can see dates from 1812.
Okay, yeah.
This is the actual inside pictures that I took. Let's see.
Oops.
Okay, so on this one, what they talk about, this is the outside of the synagogue, and it has a lot of similarities to a Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam and the Bevis Marks Synagogue. This we took inside. You can see how beautiful and ornate it is. Beautiful tiles, the dark wooden furnishings. The floors are marble, absolutely gorgeous. The gentleman standing with Marty is the cantor of the synagogue. So when we say the best laid plans, this was just a totally serendipitous thing. We ran into this gentleman. We really got a full tour of this synagogue. Going on, you'll see us one more time in there. Absolutely beautiful. This is the second synagogue in Gibraltar. It is Nefusa Yehuda, or known as the Flemish Synagogue. It opened in 1800. It was built for those who wanted to return to the more formal Dutch customs. It again is very ornate, beautifully patterned walls and ceilings, the floor. Very beautiful synagogue. And it really is not far from the Great Synagogue, but we didn't get there that day, unfortunately. Now, there are two other synagogues operating in Gibraltar today. So teeny tiny Gibraltar with 30-something thousand people has 4 active synagogues today. Each of the 4 synagogues is slightly different. One is more Moroccan, one is more formal, another is less formal, more Sephardic. So they kind of meet the needs of everybody that's there. But moving on, the most important thing, and to end our trip to Gibraltar, is Shabbat in Gibraltar. Every Shabbat, all of the Jewish-owned services, businesses, any business is closed on Shabbat, on Main Street. After services, and they have their meal, the Jews meet and congregate and have a peaceful and serene time visiting in Gibraltar. So that concludes my tour, and I will turn it back to Karen for questions, comments that you might have on anything.
All right. So, thank you, Esther. I'm looking, was there any other chats? All right, let me see what's in the chat room. All right, somebody did Joan explain why so many Jews are kosher?
I don't know, but that was what I read and what I was, everything I saw. They are very observant. Most everybody in Barcelona, most everybody in Gibraltar is Orthodox. And I guess along with being Orthodox, they observe and they've managed.
I think I saw Jackie. Did you have your hand up, Jackie? Or were you just fixing your screen? I couldn't tell. I'm looking to see any other? Oh, are there people living in the Jewish quarters in Spain? Somebody, Arlene Rosen wanted to know.
I would think so, but I mean,
It's so small.
it's so small.
Yeah, not well, other than Girona really didn't have Jews until the Chabad came, which is just what did I say?
No, I'm talking about now.
Oh, in the Jewish quarters.
When we went when you took us to the Jewish quarters, are there people living there now in those apartments?
Not so much in Toledo, I don't believe.
I don't think there's a whole lot even in Barcelona.
So there are no people. I mean, I don't mean just Jewish. I mean, there's just.
Oh, Girona? Well, Girona has a big population. It's, on the other side of the river is a very modern, newer part of the city. But yeah, very busy, very active. Yeah, lots of people living there. Not too many Jews, other than, as I said, this new, talking about Girona, there's this new Chabad that just started.
No, I was just talking if they were occupied in general.
Oh, I'm sorry, other than Jews.
Well, in the Jewish quarter, are there people living there?
Yes, definitely. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry, Arlene, I misunderstood.
Yeah, there are people, there are businesses, there's a lot of history there.
Oh, thank you, Judy Glazer. That was Meisler. Thank you. Was Meisler or Meisner? All right, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
No, Meisner is the thing in Fort Lauderdale, the Boca.
But that's the same one.
No, this is Meisler because I have a bunch of his stuff.
Gotcha.
Meisler, Israeli.
Okay, got it. That was the piece of art in the museum in Girona. Yeah, thank you. All right, Susie, you have your hand up, I can see.
Yeah, we were in Spain in 2004, right after the train station bombing.
Oh, yeah.
And we went on our own, and we went, Art made arrangements for us to go to the Seder, the first night of Passover. So it was very high security, I remember. All the streets were closed off around the synagogue. We had to have our passports. We had to pay for everything in advance, I remember. And we went in, and first there was a service, and the men were downstairs and the women were upstairs. And the Seder was interesting. The Seder was done in Hebrew, but the instructions were in Spanish. We were in Madrid. We were in Madrid for the Seders. And there were a lot of American students on vacation then, because it was, spring break, and their parents came over from the United States. And it was an unbelievable, elaborate meal. It was just fantastic. And then as we were in Madrid for a few days, we saw all these people in the streets. So it was kind of cool. That was really interesting too. Just wanted to mention that for an experience that, we had that was a little bit different. It's fun to go for holidays. So that was one of the holidays we were in Spain. For Portugal, we were there 51 and a half years ago for a honeymoon. Oh, wow. So it was completely different. I remember the cobblestone streets. In those days, you wore heels. So, oh my God, the bottoms of my feet were, oh my God, all those stones that stick up into your, in shoes and everything. But then it was in May. It was beautiful. And we went all over Portugal. It was just fabulous. Really, really nice. Wonderful. So they're the two places that, we were there that on this particular trip, I want to mention.
Okay, Arlene, I see your hand. I'm trying to go back and forth. Okay.
I don't know if it was Toledo or Barcelona, but there were two temples. There was an Ashkenazi temple and a Sephardic temple. And you said you had mentioned that the Ashkenazi temple was only open on the high holidays.
That's what I read.
Barcelona, right?
Oh, okay. Okay, that was Joan. So
yeah, in Barcelona, in the Synagogue Maimonides.
Okay. So, but if you were Ashkenazi, were you able to go to Shabbat services in the Sephardic temple?
Oh, I assume. I would assume so, because they pretty much do it for everybody. Okay. And you also don't forget have the Chabad services as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Anybody? Terry?
Yeah, I just want to say, I said this to Karen earlier, when we were in Oporto, maybe 4 years ago, we were on a tour, and I asked the young man, were there any Jews in town? And he said, yes, there was a small synagogue a little out of the center of town. But he said, most of us believe that 90% of us here have Jewish blood in us. So he said, we're very respectful and very appreciative of the history we have because of the Jews. So I thought that was really quite something for him to say.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. I'm just keep looking. Anybody? I don't see any hands. Anybody else?
Marilyn Shire has her hand up.
Okay.
Unmute yourself, Marilyn.
Go ahead, Marilyn. Yeah.
Unmute yourself.
Can we unmute her?
No, we can't.
No, we can't. You're right.
Marilyn, if you're on a laptop, even on your picture, you should be able to move your mouse to the top right-hand corner where you are, and there should be an unmute there.
Your other right.
Oh, you're unmuted.
Got it. Okay, I've been there. I was there about 20 years ago. It was fabulous. Barcelona, Spain. Have not been to Portugal, but there was a wonderful academic book called The Jewel of the World that I read that is just illuminating. It's about how the Catholics, the Muslims, and the Jews all interacted, coexisted, and made Spain the greatest country in that century at that time. The downfall was Ferdinand and Isabella, making it all Catholic. But the Jews, whether it was artisans or professionals, and the Muslims and this and that, adapted each other's names. The architecture was all co-joined. Everything was just fabulous. They all got along well. They loved each other. And when this whole dynamic changed, that was the end of Spain. Shame on them.
Yeah.
That was the end of Spain.
So
But everyone got along. And this book, if I remember, is called The Jewel of the World. And it's amazing. It's an academic book. And anyone who's interested in this culture or these cultures, this is the book.
Yeah. David?
Yeah, we approached Gibraltar not from the ocean, but from the land. And the first time I was there, it was closed off because Franco was pretty angry about the fact that the British wouldn't give him back Gibraltar. The second time we were there was long after Franco, and we approached it by road. And the first thing you do is you have to drive across the active runway. The road actually goes across the runway and of the airport. And what they do is it's like a train or blockade when a plane is coming in. They put down a gate. And as you get there, you are greeted by an English bobby or a cop, and you think you're in England with one exception, and that is that they drive on the same side as we do, as opposed to the way they do it in England, because they're afraid people going back and forth between Spain and Gibraltar will actually have accidents because they will be on the wrong side of the road. But it's fascinating to approach it by the land, and we were there before the cable car. You had to drive up the mountain inside, and there's a theater, and there's just amazing things inside the rock. And you wind up at a fort, which is at the very top, and the views from there are just beautiful.
We really would love to have seen that. As I said, we made the decision not to because it was so overcast. They kept saying, don't waste your time. And I really didn't realize how much there was to do once I got up there. But it worked out for us because we got to see the temple.
That was good. We didn't get to do that.
Yeah, nor did we. We didn't either. Judy Glazer, I see.
Yeah, I was just going to share too. We had been staying in southern Spain, so we went on a van tour because they told us not to attempt to go in by car ourselves. It was too difficult. So we went in the van. But when we got there, and after we did the whole stuff on the rock, and the ape sat on Jeff's head and all that stuff, which I said, don't touch them. Of course, he sat down and jumped on him. But anyway, we found a different synagogue than Joan did, and beautiful doors with wooden doors with Jewish stars on them. And there was a little boy playing, and we asked if it was open, could we come in? And he said, oh, my father's the rabbi. So he runs inside and he comes out and says, oh, my father says it's not convenient. So we were like, okay. But the tour guide on the bus told us a few places to shop. And one of them we went to, and it happened to be an Israeli. So there's quite a few Israelis there in addition to the Chabad, because they're everywhere. And I did get a really lovely piece of jewelry from this guy, and it's 3 circles, and it says, I love you, and it's in Spanish, English, and Hebrew. And then you could pick, what stone you wanted in them. So that's kind of a special thing. So there are a lot of Jews, and they're all shopkeepers.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? I'm just curious, have any of you been to Girona? Judy?
We went to the Dali Museum. So
Yeah,
Figueroa, we went on the train
We're
by
the ones that told
ourselves.
us about the Dali Museum, and I think it was when I was looking into that.
Yeah,
that I
right.
found
We
out
went
Girona.
before. Yeah, it was a lot of really
Yeah,
great
so you were
experience.
the ones who got us going there.
And there's a whole section in the Dali Museum of art that he did right after 1948, all photos of the ships coming, like the Exodus that came to Israel with all the people coming from Europe. And if you remember that, there was an entire room dedicated to that.
Oh, I mean, it's a phenomenal. I just showed you a couple of shots because we really wanted to focus on Jewish Spain, but yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway, I really recommend Girona and that whole area. If you
Yeah.
have a Barcelona-based cruise. I'm going back and forth to see if I see the other hands up, comments, I think. All right, well, I thank you all. I thank Carol and Joan for a wonderful, thank you all. We appreciate it. And yeah, we look forward to, hopefully this was meaningful, and we hope to, as I say, David and Terry rather, will be taking us to Eastern Europe next month on the 27th. And we thank you all and have a nice rest of your evening.
Thank you, Carol and Karen and Joan, for a great presentation. This was really quite wonderful. Thank you so much for all your hard work.
Thanks.
You are most welcome.
Good job, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. We
Everybody
really
have a-
enjoyed it. Enjoyed it. Kate.
Have a Zizen Pesach, everybody.
Have a what? Oh,
Zizen
Pesach.
Pesach.
Thank you. Yes, we will. Okay. All right. I'm
Here.
gonna end the
I'm
meeting.
gonna stop the recording.
Okay. Thanks.